Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 13, we think, of the OpenStack Now podcast. Someday I'll remember what it's called also. Today we have with us Sriram Subramanian of the Cloud Don. He is the Cloud Don. Today he's not wearing his hat, so we'll try and recognize him anyway. I have also with me John Jainschigg from Mirantis, and I, of course, am Nick Chase from OpenStack Now and Mirantis as well. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick.
Yes. Thank you, Nick. Thank
All
you,
right.
John. Winning you and John.
So Sriram, you have done one thing that neither John nor I had the opportunity to do, and that is you went to the Tokyo Summit. John and I were both stuck here at home covering the summit from here, which was lots of fun, which meant we were also on Tokyo time. We just weren't actually in Tokyo. But you got to go and see things firsthand and participate in the hallway tracks and all of that stuff. And so we wanted to bring you in and find out, what did we miss?
Thank you for having me, Nick. Thank you. The OpenStack Tokyo was much fun. And it was also the first time that I was invited as an analyst. Even though I've been a frequent, I've been attending summits for the past 5 times, 6 times, but this is extra special because I was invited as an analyst, and I got to see the summit from a different angle and perspective.
Really?
So, yep. And good that you were in Tokyo time to catch up with the news, right? But what's fun is that during the daytime, we are all soaking up all the summit fun, but in the evening time, you're soaking up the party, so we couldn't catch up at all.
I know, exactly. But that's okay. So what was so different? What was different about seeing it as an analyst versus seeing it as a participant?
Oh, sure. The first thing as an analyst would be like, we are privy to, for instance, closed door conversations. I don't want to call it closed door, but some of the use cases or some of the users are more open to talk in depth about their use cases, right? Like there's a lot of difference between, say, a big financial firm coming up in another thing in the keynote saying that we have a OpenStack cloud running in production versus probing them in detail, like what is the size of your cloud and how many are there? Tell me the path. Talk about the challenges. So a few things that they may not be comfortable sharing on the keynote stage or in public, right? Of course, a few things are under NDA, so analysts cannot talk about that. But the intention here is that giving an opportunity to the analyst and media to ask any question, comfortable or uncomfortable, to the foundation, to the team, and then to get in-depth details about something that's in progress, right? So basically, to see what would make the analyst feel more confident, and what kind of data that you would like to see under no restrictions, right? And from that, it was very interesting. And the other thing that I also get, both as an analyst and also as an onlooker, in the analyst session, outside the analyst session, looking through the reports coming out during the summit and coming out of the summit, I have a feeling that generally the media and analysts are more positive and more encouraging, and they have more confidence on OpenStack right now than ever before.
Well, that's
that
good.
was very interesting and positive to see, and particularly for someone who started as an SI system integrator and an independent consultant with OpenStack, and then who has been evangelizing OpenStack, who has been talking about OpenStack, like, hey, you can do this, you can do that, these are the shortcomings. But to get something like a word of confidence from the very critical group, right, the analyst group, that was very interesting to see.
So go ahead, John.
I was going to ask, has there been a watershed event that's changed things, or is it just the gradual accretion of positive production deployments, for example, that is moving people to increase levels of acceptance and assurance?
Sure. So I would like to add, I think, two major things. I can't call it like a watershed event, but it's generally gradual. But over the course of time, how the community has responded, right? So the biggest feedback or the biggest concern had been like, hey, there is no vision, if you want to call that. There is no roadmap that will address a customer's concern. Like, if customer or the people who are deploying and having challenges with OpenStack are having problem, and if they are giving a feedback, how does that get rolled back into a feature or not just a bug fix or a feature or something that aligns the vision of the product or a project that was missing. And in the past 6 months, there has been significant improvement in that part from the product working group. And then they were able to come up on stage and say, this is what we have been doing, and this is what we have in plan for. This is how a particular feedback from a customer gets rolled back into a user story to a prioritized list to a feature into the blueprint, right? So that circle seems to be complete now, and that is definitely a significant factor in improving anybody's confidence. That's one thing. The second thing is, we have more and more use cases coming out, and people have been demonstrating, right? That's there. And the third thing, as an industry, as an OpenStack observer, right? I think if you look at it, um, the major players right now are the big players, right? We used to be the community of small startups and system integrators. At some point, Mirantis was the largest player in the community, and we have much larger players, right? Whether they have the OpenStack expertise or whether they have as much as expertise as the niche startups, that's debatable. But they do have the customer confidence in other areas, right? And they're trying to bring that confidence into delivering OpenStack-based solutions and products, which is increasing the confidence of both customers and the observers. So those two, I would think, from my point of view, are a few things that and increased use cases. Those three have added to increased confidence.
That's pretty much what we see on the ground elsewhere in watching the industry, isn't it, Nick? The increased concern, for example, for what is, I think, generally being called day two concerns,
Yes.
which is another way of saying, so now you own it. What are you going to do with it, right? Or is your first experience going to be running up against a roadblock, or is it going to be a smooth application of of OpenStack as product to your use case? And this is wonderful, I guess, that the organic governance of the projects, as a whole, has become full circle responsive to customer requirements in a non-theoretical sense. I mean, almost everyone who works with OpenStack is no doubt everybody's coders, right? Coders solve problems, and they usually do so for someone else, right? They don't solve their own problems. It's not R&D. But still, it is good, I guess, to see the institutional level of concern and the structure around.
I agree.
Rolling
and
up things to the boat.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I'm finished. Sorry.
One thing to note is that with the big tent model, right, which is supposed to be more inclusive, and from my point of view, big tent is supposed something like that to reduce the barrier to add any new project, right? We used to have the incubation cycle, and all those things would ensure. It would take more time for sure, and if you want to call it, ensure more quality of adding something, not upstream, but adding something to the list of projects, right? For the lack of better word, core projects. With the Big Ten, we have more projects coming in, so the product working group isn't covering all of them yet, but it covers the things that are being deployed by most of the customers, right? Top 6 projects, top 10 projects, for instance, instead of like 44 that the 44 listed in the YAML right now. So what the point I'm trying to make is that the governance is going towards where, like, the barrier to entry is less. Anybody can add something as a list of available services, but the product working group is also taking more ownership. It is not there yet covering all the projects, but whatever they have taken ownership of right now, those are the things that most of the customers, more than 60% of 70% customers deploy right now, and that's what they care the most about. And they have demonstrated this full circle there, that at least the way how a full feedback circle can be implemented. So the next release with this feedback loop is going to be very interesting to watch out and see what quality of what quality of features that we get out of it.
That's very interesting. In the process, I guess it sounds like the project is, well, the projects and the community as a whole are moving organically towards a sustainable level of opinionation about some of this stuff. Because ultimately, the customer saying, I really, really need it this way,
right,
is a powerful source of legitimate opinion. It's really the only source of legitimate opinion since, software is supposed to solve problems for real people, right? It's not just there to look pretty.
What? It's not just a game that we engage in because we're bored?
But at the same time, the fact that barriers to entry, at the fringes for new ideas, hasn't been stopped down by, the emergence of an old guard, or anything so grim.
Exactly.
The way it sometimes is in, in conventional organizations, for example, that produce individual products for themselves is
Right.
pretty miraculous. It's great to watch.
It's actually interesting to watch as well, particularly like, when the presidents had been like with the benevolent dictator in
Yeah,
the
right.
Linux project, right? There had always been debates around, hey, do we need this? Do we do we not need this, right? I think we are in a the OpenStack community is in a very good situation right now to govern the projects, right? So it is saying they have the flexibility, they have enough flexibility to not restrict anybody who's really interested in contributing. However, they also have the systems in place to put in like how we can make it a better project, given the fact that also by enabling whoever wants to be in, they can do it. So it's a combination of both. As less as governance as possible, but as much as quality gate as needed.
So what was your sense of how this feedback loop that we now say is complete? Give us a little bit more information on the mechanics of how that is supposed to work. So if you're a customer of OpenStack, or you want to be a customer of OpenStack, but it's missing this little thing over here, what does that life cycle look like?
So, okay, just based on my understanding, I might be missing a few things. I might be a little bit wrong. The product working group is the authority to present that one. Of course, the customers, there are the known ways like filing a bug, but filing a bug is, we all know that how it works, and we don't, the customers don't have time to do that. And also when you file a bug, it's kind of, depending on the version that you're on, it could be an obsolete, it could have been already fixed or whatever, right? But most importantly, I think the feedback mechanism is like, they have conversations with the customers, whether based on their interactions, based on whether the customers ask the people within the product working group or anybody, right? So the exact place where the feedback gets in may not be like a very rigid structure, but based on the conversations, based on what they hear, based on their own experience and stuff, the product working group comes up with the user stories, right? Of course, they do talk with the PTLs, and the product working group is not, they can't possibly do everything for all the projects, given that they are not experts in, say, Nova or Keystone. They do talk with the PTL and the core reviewers in the group to come up with the user stories, and then not just with the user stories, prioritizing that, like what is more important from their understanding of the problem, from their understanding of what customers want. And then once they prioritize that, those user stories will get converted into the what feature that we need to implement, right? From that point onwards, it becomes the project owners the PTLs and core reviewers take ownership of that. And then given the timeline, given the what we can do at this point, given the amount of work that needs to be done, it's a combination of those things, and then few things get prioritized, few things get pushed down, and once they get, okay, this is something that we can implement, then they go through the usual cycle of blueprints and getting discussions and then getting implemented. So the key thing is like getting the user stories correct, and then getting the user stories up to the visibility of the project teams, and converting that into the feature implementations. I think that is where the product work group is very significant in their role, and they've been doing a fantastic job so far.
So it's not just a bunch of coders theorizing how users might use something. It's actual real feedback from users saying this is exactly what we actually need, not what you think it might be.
Exactly. And these user stories, of course, are anybody can give feedback to that, right? It's open, right? So it's a wiki or somewhere. It's anybody, any customer who wants to have a say, they can contribute to the use case. They can help. They can edit. They can help giving more inputs. And yes, exactly. These user stories are based on the customer feedback. It is not a theoretical one. It is not what the developer wants. Someone could make use of it. This is something based on the real conversations.
Gotcha.
That's the important part. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, and I may err in phrasing this question. I may have to come back to it. It strikes me that one source of user stories is the experience of IT professionals whose view of infrastructure is as a bunch of disconnected parts that you have to maintain. In other words, we have to build a data center, and we do it with stuff, and we do it with platforms, and we do it with some cloud products, including OpenStack.
Okay.
But fundamentally, our concern is how do we deliver, VMs to people, with operating systems, development environments, and other, applications on them. Then incoming is this new concern about platform as a service and containers, which is a completely different, in a sense, almost completely IT, at least for the end user, free way of looking at cloud infrastructure and how to use it and deploy against it. And it struck me in my interactions with people who are working on the on the intersection between PaaS and IaaS, that this is potentially a very new source of new demands, and that the demands are phrased differently, but some of them are as strident as anything IT could come up with.
Right.
But coming from a different constituency.
I'm glad that you brought it up, and of course, like it's a very hot topic, right? So containers are definitely the rage, and along with containers, the orchestration tools, frameworks, solutions, however you want to call that, on top of it, right? So it appeared to be a stronger threat to OpenStack, and definitely like a year ago, OpenStack community reacted late. I would say they weren't very. Did kind of at some point they seem to have been blindsided, but in the past 1 year, definitely the community has done a lot of work in enabling containers as native as native citizens on the OpenStack ecosystem. And Magnum is a good project, and it's seeing good traction as well. So from how OpenStack has embraced containers, it is a very it's a great example of how resilient the community is, and then it is that definitely has also added to the customer confidence. It is not like something OpenStack has given up or being blindsided, right? In the past 1 year, there's enough work has been done to enable containers, and there's success to that one. The question would be someone new or someone who's considering the modern or new style of IT, right? So if they are new to OpenStack, if they haven't done anything, and if they're just brand new coming in, the question that they might face is, say, do I have to invest in OpenStack, or rather, can I go to the PaaS layer, or can I go to containers directly, right? There's a lot of and there are metrics to that one. But one thing that I would like to say, one thing that I'm seeing, like the importance of OpenStack or OpenStack like solution is like, if they are investing in infrastructure as a code, that's OpenStack is in a good position to deliver that. A single unified API to manage bare metal or VMs or containers, OpenStack is the best right now to do that, right? to provide an infrastructure if you want to treat if you code as your infrastructure as a code, and if you want to have a maintainable, sustainable solution for that one, OpenStack is in the best place. Whether do you want to bypass that, whether do you want to put a PaaS layer on top of bare metal directly, that's a different question. Like I generally don't recommend one solution to everybody, but I'm trying to see the value of OpenStack here and why OpenStack is still relevant in spite of the container onslaught is the infrastructure as a code piece. And I've talked to large customers who have OpenStack deployments. In fact, I've been more blunt in asking this question. Hey, you guys have VMs and containers and they're bare metals. Like, if you were to start a new, forget about your existing OpenStack investments. If you were to start afresh, you have bare metals and you're moving into the next gen, would you have bypass OpenStack? The question has been, no, we do need OpenStack, and this is exactly the case why we need it. So, it is a validation of my understanding, and this is not a POC. It's one of the largest OpenStack customers that I've talked to. So that
obviously we tend to agree that there's nothing in containers and PaaS that doesn't really enrich OpenStack and vice versa. And it occurs to me that one reason for that, beyond the obvious that that if you're talking about private clouds, PaaS needs a place to run, is that to collapse everything to collapse everything to PaaS returns you to a monoculture at a certain level. It means that one of the prime virtues of OpenStack is that at the end of the day, it is just a framework that incorporates and connects all of these different technologies, so it maintains diversity, biodiversity in the ecosystem, and that's important for customer choice, obviously, but it's also important for things like security, which can kill you if you go to monocultures. So,
the other thing that I would like to highlight here is that the innovations happen at like really quicker pace. OpenStack is definitely innovating, and there's a lot of momentum 2 years ago, right? The customers' confidence are the large customers enabling this. It may not happen in the same pace as the innovations happen, right? So they tend to play this wait and watch game. Some of them might experiment. Some of them might have some implementations. Some of more ambitious customers, but a large chunk of them tend to wait until it becomes like a mature, if you want to call that, right? So the container ecosystem is not quite there, even though we see a lot of stories with there is enough confidence in having thousands of containers up and running and in a fairly faster time and shutting them, right? But we don't have enough confidence on like what is the story with variety of storage backends? What is the story with variety of networking backends? I might be missing that. I would like to learn more on that from what I've read and what I've seen, right? So and until those things happen, right? The customer adoption is going to, at least the large size customer adoption is going to lag. But OpenStack has gone through that and is in a phase where like there is enough confidence and people are adopting and using that, right? It will take a couple of years, at least couple of years for the container ecosystem to go there. It's definitely, there's a lot of promise there. The customers would want to wait and watch and before taking it, right? And again, one thing to say is that turning thousands of VMs on and off, thousands of containers on and off is like Office. It's great, but as you mentioned about the day two, right? What is the story when I have, say, my thousands of containers, whatever application have up and running? If I want to have a patch, security patch, without the dependency not clearly like stored anywhere or defined anywhere, how am I going to patch them all effectively? I don't understand that quite yet. I would like to hear more on someone who does that, and I would be happy to change my opinion on that point.
Excellent. So, Sriram, was there anything that you heard or learned that really surprised you?
I wouldn't call it surprising, but one thing that I think in the last podcast I had mentioned that OpenStack ecosystem kind of tend to run on two directions right now. One to cater to the enterprise customers and one to cater to telcos, right? So
Right.
there's a reaffirmation of what I have said and what I've observed from the past, the last year, right? The the delivering to the enterprise piece, enterprise customers piece, like more improvements to HA, better documentation about HA, and then product working group giving this stability to the future. There has been improvement to that one has definitely increased enterprise confidence. There has been also a lot of talk about open NFV features, and not more than one player has been like investing, right? Mirantis, HP, Red Hat, lot of vendors have been investing on enabling NFV features. So telcos have been like very early adopters of OpenStack. They always like the flexibility that OpenStack provided, and NFV is their like pet use case. It was validating. It was a validating to see that not just the vendor side of it, the customers also like asking for it. And then they may not be like as many as we have right now in the enterprise space, like really using the NFV use cases, but there's definitely like a increasing demand to that side, and it was good to see that.
So it seemed like there was, talking about two sides, it seemed like there was a big debate over should OpenStack, bless you, should OpenStack continue to try and support these traditional enterprise workloads, or should it just go, jump into cloud native with both feet? It was Ken Hoy, who's also been on this podcast. He hosted a panel where that was the debate. How big? I mean, it seemed like a big discussion on this side of the ocean. How big of a discussion was it over there?
So my understanding of that is like, there is still a debate, but there is definitely understanding that we need to support both. So there had been opinionated discussions about, okay, ditch the large scale use case and just don't worry about the cloud aware. The enterprises want, at least in the last summit, right? Enterprises want these kind of features. We need to go and support this existing monolithic applications. Let's focus on that. And part of the team has been like, part of the community has been like, no, large size use cases had been large scale service provider has been our very earliest use cases. We have to support them. I see that large scale service provider it's taken a version 2 of it. Like there is not a noise about we need to support an Amazon compete, right? They are not really worried about supporting a public cloud service provider at the scale of Amazon, or we only have only one remaining right now, right? Only one large remaining right now in the US. So, but the service provider use case or the service provider customer profile has been like modified to addressing the telco service provider, particularly around the NFV side of it. And I am not seeing a dichotomy between this or that. It is I'm seeing that let's do both, right? Two different use cases, but we need to address them both. Fortunately, conveniently, I would say, the lot of use cases, the NFV use cases work needs to happen in Neutron, and the design is in a way that like it is the plugin model and whatnot. It enables that, right? While the focus is on getting the enterprise ready, enterprise grade, if you whatever you want to call that, whatever the vendors would like to call that, those features are in place, right? Enabling HI is kind of not just one feature; it is more of a guideline across multiple services, right? So those are the things that can happen, and they don't hinder these kind of work that's happening in Neutron that enables NFC specific. So yeah, I say that they both go hand in. They can go both together, and I'm reading that the community wants to have them both. Those two cases. I'm not necessarily reading that we need to resurface the public cloud service provider use case. It's kind of gone.
Okay. John?
That in itself is fascinating, and I'm going to have to take it to our next conversation, I guess, to fully digest that.
Sure.
It's reassuring that that the community admits that both threads are still important. It does strike me that as far as supporting the monolithic workloads, that there have been third-party connections to OpenStack made more and more firmly over the past 2 years from people who make it their business to support those workloads. Let's not even name them because we all know who they are.
I love this. I love this. How much clearer can you be without actually saying it?
But that sort of almost make that problem go away. I mean, it's not like people need to do a lot of R&D when someone else has done a lot of R&D and then plug their stuff into OpenStack. Which is a good thing. I sort of lament the disappearance of OpenStack public clouds from the large scale forward scene myself, because my experiences of them were excellent, frankly. I love that paradigm, but that's just because the kind of work that I do as a marketing quasi-engineer is made hugely easier by being able to reach out across the cloud or the internet with a credit card and go, give me a cluster for 24 hours. I need it because I need to make a video about something.
One thing that I would like to add to that is, if the large scale public cloud service provider is closing down or decide to close down, it should not be read that it is because of a deficiency from OpenStack or the platform just do.
Yeah,
it's right. It's just economics of scale, and nobody can meet Amazon's market, right? So margins and it just works out for them. The model works out for them. Their focus is on the marketplace, and whatever that gets out of Amazon, AWS is extra for them. So that I think that's the only thing that observers need to understand, rather than seeing it as a failure of OpenStack. There had been a couple of articles saying that, oh no, HP gave up because of OpenStack. It's not the case.
And the fact is, at the same time that HP is giving up, there are other OpenStack-based public clouds coming in.
Spinning up. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so it's
people are going to keep taking a run.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm
not denying
City
that.
Cloud, and there's plenty of other OpenStack-based public clouds out there, and more all the time. So I think this was more about HP and less about OpenStack.
It is about their priorities. That's about
yes,
it.
Exactly, and that's fine.
We also need to note that there are public cloud service providers in the different regions like Europe and APAC that's either doing well or picking up and doing right. Yeah. So but one has to understand that they can never be Amazon killers, and then Amazon killers is something that only Azure can dream of. Nobody else can dream of, right? But we have to focus on, the community has to look at, this is not something because of the problems or deficiency of OpenStack. At least you should not blame the project for this decision, right? And then need to move on. And if someone wants to take care and then do that one, then whoever is doing, they need to understand that this is what they're heading against, and they need to be realistic about their financial or economic goals.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are coming up against our end time, I'm afraid. Yes. John, did you have any further questions?
No, I'm good. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Sriram.
Thank you so much,
John. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, John. Talk to you guys soon.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much. So again, it just remains for me to thank John Jainschigg and Sriram Subramanian. I'm Nick Chase. Our next episode of OpenStack Now will feature Rocky Gruber from Huawei.
Wow.
So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Hi, John.
Hi, how are you, Sriram?
I'm good. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Nick, you are in the middle today.
Oh, okay. All right. Now who's on which side?
So I'm to the right,
You're
and
to my
Sriram
right.
is to your wait. Let me think about this. I'm to your left, and Sriram is to your right.
Okay. Which is opposite of what they are on my screen.
What I need to do is look
You're
to
around.
my right to see both of you, and Sriram, you need to look to your left to see both of us, in case you want to, experiment with mime.
I can see you both.
Yes.
If I
Right.
just look
Well,
straight.
Well, what we do, well, the thing is, what's going to happen is when John ultimately produces this, our three faces will be
In a line.
just in a line.
I see. Okay.
And so sometimes what we do is we do this thing where we pretend that we're looking at each other.
Okay. If I look like this, then I'm looking at you both.
Right. That's
right?
correct.
That
Yeah.
is correct.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
So now I might.
But,
Sorry. Go ahead.
please don't do that. Comfortable. It's. I have a feeling that someday this is going to come back and bite us in the butt. It's not
No. How about this? Is it better?
Oh yeah.
So this
That's
angle.
what I usually do. That
Yeah.
is what I usually do.
So this angle would make me. Okay. This angle would make me look at you when I'm talking.
Exactly, and then this should
And then
put me in
would appear
opposition.
as if okay.
Right. And I of course I'm in the middle, so
You have to remember where we both are.
I have to remember where you both are, which is actually opposite of where you actually are on my screen. So
Right.
John is actually to my right. So like now I'm looking at John. Now I'm actually looking at Sriram on my screen. Now I'm looking at John on my screen. It's
Right, but that's the
totally
opposite of what you should be doing.
Right.
Wow. It's confusing. Maybe we could just say, keep looking friend. That's probably okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
think that's
joke
exactly
around
what
with
we
this
should do.
We should do that. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll do
The
that.
reason is, if I forget it, you will be addressing me but looking at him.
That's
I
right.
know. And that's what John worries about.
Yeah.
Okay.
John is my reasonableness.
But I also look forward to a time when we can bring sock puppets and marionettes and other things into this production. And, we can do things like jump a sock puppet from one screen to the next, even though the people are thousands of miles apart.
So
Anyway.
we did that informally when our son was very young. Like he's 8 now, but when he was 2 years, we would just Skype call with my brother-in-law. He was in Denmark at that point, so he would just crumple a ball and throw it on the screen, and then I would have another ball in my hand to catch. My son would believe that he threw it from Denmark.
I tell you, and our audience is, they would be amused at this, I'm sure, as your infant son, I'm sure was.
In a completely different way, of course.
Okay, so
All right.
we're ready to go.
So we are ready. Yes. Right. And yes, we should probably